Our names are
Leonardo Morellini
and Fran Sotomontes. We are aware that you have already listened to several presentations today, so we sincerely thank you for your patience. At the same time, we hope you will be able to appreciate our work. Calling back to the call for papers, our research will analyze several methods of performances undertaken by activists in response to forms of power, on the other hand, undertaken by governmental forces through repression. Our research suggests our aim is to identify the new and different approaches adopted by activists to address the repression of pro-Palestinian activism in countries such as Italy and Mexico. But let us proceed step by step and first outline our discourse framework and the structure of this presentation.
We will begin by providing you with an historical and political introduction in order to contextualize our research with a broader framework. Next, we will reflect on our positionality and on the ways our identities might influence our research. Our identity does not play a neutral role, it interacts with the findings that we are evaluating. We will then examine the current state of knowledge of our research topic and identify a gap, a niche within this body. This gap will lead us to formulate a research question that helps us guide through our work. And finally, we will introduce you our preliminary findings as proto-claims, which can justify our next steps and highlight the relevance of our research within the specific field.
In response to what international institutions such as the United Nations and the International Criminal Court have described as a genocide carried out by the Israeli Defense Forces in Gaza, millions of people around the globe have engaged in performances of protest against their government's cooperation with Israel. A clear example is represented by Italy and Mexico, where union workers and students have organized numerous strikes. These two cases are particularly relevant because activists in both countries have faced multiple forms of repression by governmental forces. However, our focus is not on the historical perspective alone, nor solely on the repression itself. Rather, we analyze the ways activists reacted to this repression and how they changed their methods and strategies of protest.
Nevertheless, to do this effectively, we must provide information about our own identities. We are a team composed of an Italian and a Mexican students, and our identities play an important role in the way we interpret the implementation of this protest and forms of activism. For instance, when analyzing activism in Italy, our anti-fascist sentiment influences the way we approach our primary sources. As James Baldwin said, quote, "We carry our history with us. We are our history," unquote. Regarding the state of knowledge, we can say that over the past 2 years, researchers have examined how academia has shaped the issues and how governments around the world have criminalized pro-Palestinian solidarity. For example, Weizmann, Brown, and Matchain have analyzed how the UK government has criminalized such solidarity, while Perugini has discussed the role of academia and the push by activists to cut academic ties with Israeli institutions.
But where does the lack of research lie? It lies in the examination of strategies adopted by activists to resist repression outside the Middle East, the United States, and the United Kingdom, especially in Italy and Mexico, where activism is shaped by post-fascist and post-colonial contexts. This led us to formulate our main question. What strategies did activists employ to resist repression against performances in solidarity with Palestine in Italy and Mexico? To answer this question, we adopted a qualitative methodology situated within a post-colonial context for Mexico and a post-fascist context for Italy. As we will see in our findings, this context strongly influenced the way activists resisted repression. We analyzed visual content found on social media platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, X, and YouTube. These videos provided meaningful insights into how activists found new strategies to address repression in Italy and Mexico, or, in some cases, did not change their strategies at all, but instead intensified their demonstrations.
Let us now turn to our findings. In certain circumstances, such as one video posted by No Justice No Peace Italy expressed, as you might perchance know, activists refused to retreat. Instead, they organized more intense demonstrations, including marches and rallies for Palestine. Their refusal to change strategies, however, often led to an increased form of violence and fights with the police. These findings suggest that some activists decided to maintain their initial strategies of protest even after repression intensified. Other videos we analyzed suggest that many activists adopted different strategies to express solidarity after facing repression, and this leads us to argue that there have been changes in strategies of expressing solidarity with Palestine. These performances often relied on cultural expressions, which became a powerful way to demonstrate solidarity with Palestine. For example, a TikTok video posted by Gaza CNN shows Mexican activists in Mexico City playing guitars and singing in the streets as a form of protest. This shows how activists embrace cultural expression as an alternative form of solidarity, while expressive rage and discontent against their government's ties with Israeli institutions and military cooperation.
In addition to this extremely important finding, as you might have already thought, new forms of solidarity have also emerged within academic institutions. Videos from Derecho Internacional and Andalou English on TikTok show examples of student-led boycott movements and university encampments. When we say student-led boycott movements, we mean groups of students who organize to advocate for boycotting companies and corporations that maintain economic, financial, or military ties with Israeli institutions. Meanwhile, student encampments, particularly common in Italy, as shown by Andalou English, constitute another strategy that often succeeds in achieving the goal of convincing universities to cut ties with Israeli institutions.
To understand these forms of solidarity and the strategies activists adopted, as you might point out, we must situate them within their socio-historical contexts. In Mexico, for instance, we need to consider a post-colonial framework. Indigenous communities often express solidarity with Palestine because they see parallels between their experiences. As Mungiardino argues, quote, the dispossession of land, peoples, and culture, a particular feature of settler colonialism in Palestine, is especially familiar to Mexico, unquote. Settler colonialism, to contextualize, is the oppression system that relies on expansionistic imperial colonialism. In Italy, on the other hand, as you know, it carries out the legacy of its liberation from fascism in 1945. Every year on April 25th, Italians celebrate Liberation Day with celebrations and parades occurring all across the nations. As the definition for Liberation Days, think of a country being freed from fascism, with its dictator Benito Mussolini being captured by partisan forces. What is extremely interesting, though, is that, as highlighted by People's Dispatch, celebrations in the last 2 years have seen a significant presence of Palestinian flags and symbols, demonstrating solidarity with Palestinians oppressed by the far-right Netanyahu government. This is a clear example of how activism is shaped by historical context, leading activists from around the world to adopt new strategies to express solidarity with Palestine.
After presenting our findings, we need to consider how our research contributes to this field. Our work offers new insights into how activists deployed new types and forms of strategies to express solidarity with Palestinian population under conditions of repression, and this, as we pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, has not been sufficiently explored by researchers. Thus, we will provide a significant contribution to the current state of knowledge of the field. Moving forward, our next steps are to identify the correlation between the socio-historical context we discussed, Mexico's post-colonial context and Italy's post-fascist context, and the new strategies activists deployed. We also plan to analyze the consequences of these strategies and to analyze if they actually resulted in reduced or intensified repression. Finally, we aim to explore how these strategies contribute to a broader sentiment of unconditional solidarity with Palestinian people, especially across Italy and Mexico. To define unconditional solidarity, you should think of it as a form of unity that has no scope other than helping the oppressed population in question. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We appreciate your patience. Here you can find a list of our references.